Today, we're diving into a powerful contrast in literature. It's a story of jealousy that destroys everything, versus a timeless test of character that can withstand anything.
It's a question we all face at some point. What happens when our emotions just declare war on our rational mind? Well, we're going to look at two classic works that offer two very, very different answers. So, in one corner, we have Shakespeare's tragic play, The Winter's Tale, which is a masterclass in how unchecked emotion can lead to total ruin. And in the other corner, Rudyard Kipling's iconic poem, If, which is basically a blueprint for building an unshakable character.
Let's start with Shakespeare. We're going to meet King Leontes, a guy who, by all accounts, has it all. And we're about to watch how one single destructive emotion brings his entire world crashing down.
And the crazy thing is, it all starts so innocently. King Leontes asks his wife, Queen Hermione, to try and convince his best friend to stay on his visit a little bit longer. That's it. A simple, harmless request, right?
Well, Hermione is successful. She uses her gentle and persuasive words, and it works. But instead of being pleased, something inside Leontes just snaps. All of a sudden, he's seized by this ungovernable jealousy. He doesn't see her success as an act of loyalty, he sees it as proof of betrayal.
And this, right here, is the core of the problem. Leontes knew his wife and friend. He knew about their integrity and honorable principles. He was certain of their character. But his jealousy was so powerful, it completely erased that knowledge. Reason wasn't just in the back seat, it got kicked out of the car. So, with reason out the window, Leontes transforms. His jealousy doesn't just stay in his head anymore, it explodes into a tyrant's blind rage, and the consequences, well, they're going to be devastating.
Now, he's completely convinced he's been betrayed. This insanely jealous king gives his most trusted advisor, Camillo, a horrifying order. Poison my best friend. Yeah, this is way past suspicion now. It's a full-on nosedive into madness and murder.
But Camillo, he's the voice of reason in all this. He gets this insane command, but he's smart enough to know that arguing directly is useless. Trying to reason with the enraged king would be like trying to get the sea to obey the moon. So instead, he wisely arranges for the king's friend to escape in secret.
Okay, so human reason didn't get through to Leontes. What about divine intervention? The king consults the oracle, and the verdict it sends back is absolute, crystal clear. Hermione is innocent, Polixene's blameless. Leontes, a jealous tyrant.
And yet, he rejects it. Flat out. The king gives no credit to the words of the oracle. I mean, think about that. He is so consumed by the story he's telling himself that even a divine objective truth is completely powerless.
All right, let's just hit pause on that scene of absolute chaos and turn to its perfect antidote, Rudyard Kipling's poem, If. Because where Shakespeare showed us a cautionary tale, Kipling offers us a test of character.
Kipling starts with the inner world, the mind. He says, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim. This is all about mastering yourself from the inside out.
So, what's he really getting at? He's saying, have big ambitions, absolutely, but don't become a servant to them. Be analytical, for sure, but don't get lost in analyzing for its own sake. It's all about balance, a balance that King Leontes, whose jealous thoughts became his only reality, completely lost.
Then Kipling tests our resilience. He asks if you can risk everything you've ever won, lose it all, and then just start over from the beginning, and do it without a single complaint, without even breathing a word about your loss. It's just a profound image of inner strength.
So the advice is to accept failure, not as the end, but as a new beginning, to start over with zeal and vigor, and refuse to let despair break your heart. Now, compare that to Leontes, who couldn't even handle a perceived loss without descending into tyranny.
And here it is, the contrast laid bare. On one side, you have Leontes' failure, consumed by jealousy, rejecting truth, becoming a tyrant. On the other, Kipling's ideal, keeping your head, mastering your thoughts, accepting failure, and beginning again. It really is the ultimate battle between emotional chaos and emotional discipline.
So, what happens to the man who failed this test so spectacularly? Let's return to The Winter's Tale to see how this whole story finally resolves, and what the title itself really tells us.
After years of immense suffering and loss, all brought on by his own actions, King Leontes finally becomes penitent. He feels this deep, profound sorrow and regret for everything he's done. And this repentance is the key that unlocks the final act of the play.
You know, the title itself tells the whole story. The winter part, that symbolizes the harshness, the sadness, the frozen emotional state his jealousy created. But it's also a tale, a story that, kind of like a fairy tale, ends with reconciliation and renewal. It's a reminder that even after the deepest, coldest winter, spring can return, but the cost of that winter was just tragically high.
So that leaves us with this final thought. We've seen two paths laid out before us. One is a cautionary tale of ruin, where emotion becomes a tyrant. The other is a test of character, a guide to inner strength. So the question for all of us is, which guide will you follow?